And then I was able to take 2 elephants with my bow, which is the largest thing on planet Earth that you can shoot an arrow at. And a lot of people say, why would you want to shoot an elephant? And I always say, because there isn't any more Tyrannosaurus rexes left.
Welcome to the Rich Outdoors, where we break down the tips, tactics, and strategies of hunting's greats to not only help you become better hunters, but to motivate and inspire you between hunting adventures. For more about us, including additional resources on our guests and links to everything we cover in the interview, check out therichoutdoors.net. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Rich Outdoors podcast. I'm your host, Cody Rich, and if you're just joining us, welcome to the show. This show is all about becoming a better hunter and a better outdoorsman. We interview some of the best hunters out there to figure out how we can improve and up our level as well. First off today, I want to give a big shout out to everyone who has left us a review so far, as we got a ton of reviews in the last month. Big thanks to those of you who went out of your way to tell us what you think of the show. For those of you who haven't got around to it yet, you still have one more day to put your name in the hat to win that First Light Chama hoodie and the Yano shirt that we're giving away. We're going to be drawing a name out of the hat out of all the reviews that we received in the month of July. And then next week, we'll probably post on social media who the winner was. And probably post in the episode, next week's episode as well. So get your name in the hat, get some First Light merino wool. It's great stuff. Today's episode, I'm chatting with someone that I've looked up to in the hunting industry for years. Jim Burnworth is about as accomplished and well-rounded as they come. Jim has taken over 1,000 big game animals, to include 71 elk, which is probably the most amazing statistic, at least to me, being an elk guy. Jim is relentless in perfecting his shot and has some really great advice on perfecting our shot, not to mention some great stories that will leave you chomping at the bit to head out and go hunting this weekend. So, enjoy. Hey, Jim, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you on. I'm excited to chat with you.
Cody, thanks so much for letting me spend some time with you guys. I'm excited. I mean, this isn't television; it's radio, but we're gonna be able to tell some good stories. I'm excited.
Oh, and I'm sure you have a few stories along your adventures, and you spend a lot of time traveling all over the world. Why don't you give us kind of your background and how you got to where you are?
You know what? I had an amazing father. I think that father figures in our lives can, affect us forever. And I lost my father like 3 years ago. He was my best friend, and you just can't have talks with anybody else like him. But he was an amazing man. He broke 27 world records with cars. He built the Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 deep space probe mirrors that are on the way to Andromeda that were flat to 4 millionths of an inch, and the furthest things from the United States that were touched by human hands. And he did the SR-71 out of a special metal called Lockalloy, all the leading edges, and then became Man of the Decade in the video industry. So he was an amazing man, and he taught me many, many life lessons. And so as a young man, I didn't play sports. I didn't go anywhere. I basically was at the shop learning, working with all kinds of engineers and adults, and on the side shot my bow. But I basically was a slave to him and the company, and that really allowed me to learn at a very young age about video electronics, how they worked, and video in particular. And I got married when I was 19 years old. I have 5 kids now, and the exciting part is that Lori and I were able to take that education and work together to build what became the largest video facility in San Diego. And I used to have like big semi-video trucks, just like what would be shot like at a football game or a basketball game. And so I got to do a lot of really cool things. I directed the John Glenn Space Shuttle mission. I did the X Games 4 years in a row. I did a lot of national and regional programming, commercials for Chevrolet and Pepsi and San Diego was kind of an epicenter of technology, and so having a large video facility and capable with a lot of equipment allowed us to have a lot of different stuff. But it's been a really, really fun journey, and that really led me into how I got into outdoor television.
When did you get into hunting, so to speak? Did you start hunting at a very young age, or was that something that kind of grew over time?
Well, it's funny because when I shot my very first bow, when that first arrow left the string when I was 12 years old, and nothing in my life hooked me like that. No girl, no car, no work, it was my passion. It was the one thing that I wanted to learn. And back then, there wasn't anybody to learn it from. I mean, obviously we had a few magazines, but the internet wasn't around. We didn't have a lot of education. I only remember in my hometown there ever being 3 bow hunters. So we basically had the woods to ourselves. I had a dad that, was really, really busy and working on other stuff, and he bought a bow at the same time, so we worked together. But I didn't even know which side of the string to look on. But it was in my blood. It was like, I can't imagine my life without a bow and arrow. And to look back all those years and realize that I have been able to inspire others, it's been really exciting,
So you said you didn't have a lot of inspiration and mentors when you were growing up as far as hunting. Did you have any that you looked up to? Who are the type of people you looked up to?
Chuck Adams was a really big one. And then being an Oregonian kid, obviously Dwight Shue and Larry D. Jones. Elk has been my number one passion. I've loved elk hunting. I've told a lot of people I'm not quiet, I'm not patient, I have big feet, I stumble around in the woods. But the one thing that God designed me to do was elk hunt. I just have that passion of being able to chase them down, and I've been successful. I've shot 71 bull elk with my bow now, and so I've just spent a lot of time loving them and spending time with them, and the only way life could be better is to have 12 Septembers, for sure.
So after 71 elk, do you still get the same high? Do you still feel the same rush? Or what's it like elk hunting after that? Some people are hunters and other people are shooters, and a lot of people would perceive that I'm a hunter, but I'm really a shooter. I get my excitement and my adrenaline. I have very little of it now, unless I'm hunting an elephant in Africa, or I'm doing some like wacky buffalo thing, or if I'm stalking an animal that could just turn its head instantly and look at me. I really don't get any adrenaline. I'm able to conceptualize and go through a shot process in order to make the shot, and it's something I've trained myself, because I won't shoot unless I've went through that shot sequence so that I can shoot in that magical triangle, and it's allowed me to calm down. And after you bow hunt a long time, and a lot of rifle hunters don't really feel this, because once they see the animal, they can lay down from a couple hundred yards and make the shot. But we as bow hunters have been around so much game up close that it's allowed us to really calm down and really focus on it, So, yeah, it's fun. It's super fun. A lot of successful people have routines, and like you say, you have that shot sequence that you go through. What kind of routines do you have when you're spending so much time in the woods and you're on so many hunts each year? What kind of routines do you have for a hunt?
Well, it was important for myself to learn how to shoot, and just going, and a lot of this stuff's not documented. A lot of it's nowhere. A lot of it I didn't learn from anybody. There are a few archers that I really respect, like Levi Morgan, who is just a world-class archer, and Tim Gillingham, which is one of the most educated archers there is, and I've learned a lot from Tim over the years. But other than that, I've done a lot of self-study. I have all of the high-speed cameras, and I've taught myself how to slow my rhythm down. And so there's like an entire training regiment that I've went through. I have what I call a 5-point anchor system. And it starts with a release, and I'm building and designing my own releases now. And I take a laser and I put it on my bow, and I teach myself how to slow my rhythm down. And so a lot of people waddle around the target, but what I do is I pull my front arm against my back arm to create tension to make the pin physically set. Just like when I was in the baseball stadium and I shot the baseball off the end of a bat at 100 yards in front of 50,000, if I couldn't hold the pin in the ball, there's no way that I could actually, bubble level, set the shot up, be able to see through my sight picture, hold that pin in that ball at that 100 yards in order to fire that shot and hit it. And those are things that you just have to practice, but there is a sequence. I always come up on the target, never down on the target. I I always believe that the absolute best shot on any animal for blood trail wise is at what I call the top of the lower third into the crease. So I always take my pin, I always put it in the inside of the kneecap, I float it up into the top of the lower third, and I hold it until it goes off. I never shoot a single shot without it being range found. I hold for a yard, and if I had to fractionalize between the two of them, let's say I have a 37-yard shot and I have a 30-yard pin and a 40-yard pin, it's hard to hold up and down and left and right. So if you just go ahead and fractionalize between the two of them at 37 yards where you think you're going to shoot in that magical triangle, and then you look up and you hold your 30-yard pin where it is on the animal until it physically goes off. These are just little things that I think make a big difference. The quickest way to kill an animal is to shoot him at the top of the lungs because his cavity fills up really quickly. But if you shoot him at the top of the lower third, then you have all of the gravity and all of the blood coming out onto the ground, and the blood trail's a lot better.
So what's the most difficult shot you've ever taken, and maybe what are some of your mistakes that you've kind of come to this decision through?
A lot of it is the perceived notion in the marketplace that things work a certain way. I think as I started to, a lot of people judge on whether something is right or wrong, and I'm very, very logical in my decisions. I feel like I'm responsible, as every archer should be, for every single arrow that leaves the bow. And I have made some extraordinary shots, and everybody thinks, well, there's some fancy editing and someone doesn't show a shot on TV, but the reality is, once you mark the animal, you're done. Every single arrow that I've ever shot on TV has been seen. It's been seen by thousands and thousands of people. So I have a responsibility, being in my position, to be ethical, on camera, as well as my own ethics, and balancing those two, and making sure that I'm in check, that I'm up to par overall. And so I've made lots of mistakes. That I've shot over 1,000 big game animals with my bow in my lifetime, and with that has come a lot of do's and a lot of problems. But it made me just religiously go back and work hard on being able to shoot better. And I remember a desert bighorn sheep hunt that I was on up in Sonora, Mexico, and a lot of people are going to be thinking I'm negative, but I made a shot that was 108 yards over another sheep, and went in the X-ring, and the wind was blowing 6-7 miles an hour. But your arrows, your concept, like this whole bubble leveling thing makes a big deal. I also shot the world record blessed buck at 133, and then I made the longest shot I didn't even want to talk about on a mountain goat this last year. But the wind wasn't blowing on that day, and I had practiced it, and the goat went 6 yards and fell over. So it's just, I'm not condoning anybody shooting that far, but the gear is capable, but the knowledge in the marketplace is not taking you to the right answers to be able to even shoot that far without, knowing that a bow will shoot a line, but it won't shoot a straight line, that it needs to have a bubble level, that it's completely adjustable in order to shoot the line that the bow shoots. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of things that are happening with arrow developments. With one of the things I'm really proud of is one of the most technical archery videos ever built I did for Boning Archery. And Boning hired me and said, we don't know how our fletches really work, but we really want you to, do a bunch of testing, and we want to look at them, and we want a video to represent how Boning Archery's fletches work. And I did a bunch of high-speed photography and found that a 3-degree offset is enough to stabilize the arrow, but it also is enough to not add drag and slow it down. So just there's so many things. It's hard in a few minutes with you to go through everything, but I've taken each piece of the shot and I broke it down. I looked at it all technically, and if it's on my bow, it's not there because of a sponsor. It's there because I believe in it. It's there because it serves a purpose, and it's the best gear that I know about at the time.
So as gear progresses and it gets much, much better, and shots kind of to where we can extend them, not that we should, and like you said, it comes down to practice and knowing what your equipment can do, but how do you personally make the judgment on whether something's too far or not? One thing that I have heard was that it's too far if you're not surprised that you missed.
Yeah, that's a really good statement for people. My whole thing is that I have this thing about range finding, and I I know that I'm not my best and that I will guess and fudge if I don't range find. So if you ask me to shoot in an IBO right now, the 12-year-old little girls would beat me because there's no way that I could ever range find something by looking at it, because for the last literally 15 years of my life, I have trusted my rangefinder. And so the deal is that that's really important, first off. And then how I make a decision, what I call my go, no-go gauge in my mind, I draw the bow, I look at the wind, and if I can hold the pin where I want to hold it, I fire the arrow. And if I can't, I won't. Because the margin on a deer, let's say even a mule deer buck, you're spotting stalking out there, the margin between a marginal hit and a really good hit is 3 to 4 inches. And if you can't hold 3 or 4 inches, if you can't go out, so like when I shot the desert bighorn sheep, not the one on Tiburon, but when I went to Sonora and shot that one, I literally took the cowboys. Now, if I had shot every day of my life, I know exactly what I'm capable of or not capable of, but I went in that terrain with that rock. I told them I wanted to take the cowboys out, and I wanted them to leave me alone for 2 days, and I literally climbed all those hills with a target, and I shot inverted uphill and downhill, where I palm the bow, how I hold that, where my bubble level was, how the wind will affect it, looked at how the wind affects on the ridges, All those things have a factor. I know it sounds ballistic, but it's important to me because everybody's watching. I have my own ethics, and I want to shoot an X. I absolutely just get excited about shooting X's. That's what it's about. That's what the hunt. For me, it's not the trophy. It's not the size. It's how I performed on the shot. I snuck to him. I got within. I was able to, pick the bow up, draw the bow, and then fire that arrow in a perfect spot. And no, I'm not perfect, but I want to be.
Yeah. And knowing your equipment is a part of that. For a guy who travels as much as you do, though, bet it can be hard to kind of stay proficient with your equipment. And as much as you travel, how do you stay up on your shooting skills?
It's like even in the headlights, it doesn't matter where I'm at. There are times where I'll see a buck, and I know I'm going to go stalk him in the middle of the day, and I literally whip the target out, and I shoot right before I go. And so it's just part of my regimen. It's part of just staying tuned, And it is somewhat like riding a bicycle. I know whether I'm in or out of tune or whether I feel right or wrong. And I've had to make a lot of equipment changes, of little things that I've noticed in my brain that just aren't right. And if something's not right on my equipment or right on my bow, I'm in a bad mood. I want to make sure it's right. And how many of all of us archers just wanted to take our bow and throw it off a cliff every once in a while? You've got to be a techie, kind of a tweaker guy in order to be a bow hunter for sure.
Yeah. So what advice do you have for guys? I mean, there's a lot of advice floating around about how to train, how to shoot, how to practice, shooting long range, shooting twice as far as you hunt. What advice do you have for guys about shooting, not necessarily long range, but becoming proficient with their weapon?
Well, I have a training regimen that I think is really important, and I mentioned it earlier, but I want to go through that again. If you, first off, it's about not waddling. A lot of people struggle with target panic. You can't have target panic and shoot long range. Your anchor system, a lot of things that I'd have to go into detail. But the one thing that you can do that a few years back, I have 2 older boys, and both of them had all of their friends come over to the house, and we have a 26-yard indoor archery range in our home. It's like our man cave. Everybody comes as friends, and so over the years I've had all kinds of kids that were 14, 15, 16 years old. Their hand-eye coordination are really good, and my greatest, I think, achievement is to take those kids and teach them things and then have them go out to the 3D tournaments and then, win them wearing white T-shirts, not sponsored by anybody. And what I do is I teach them with a laser. And so what you do is you basically take a laser and you put it on your bow. You don't want the laser in your sight picture. You just want it to point on the wall. Then what you want to do is, I start them at 10 yards, but you can go back to 20. You take the pin and you put it in a very small 1-inch. They buy them at Home Depot. They're like a little red tag with like a nail in them, and you can put them on the target, and you hold the pin in that 1-inch target. Then you have your buddy take his phone and record video-wise, that laser and the sporadicness of it, okay? But you don't want it in your sight picture. Now you can see how much you're physically moving, and this is a test on the very first day. Then what I want you to do is make the draw length absolutely perfect. Now what I do is that every single release is a different size. So a lot of people say, well, I'm 28. Well, how do you know you're 28? You might be 27. You might be 29, depending on the size of release that you're using. So I always draw a marker on their face, and I build an anchor point with what I call my 5-point anchor point. I actually use an inverted release that goes underneath my chin, and I put my peep sight so low that I have to tip my nose into my bowstring to lock the bottom between my jaw and my eyeball that has a sight picture. Because I found that about almost 85% of the archers, I could move their peep sight, and they would not even know that I had moved it until they saw impact on target, because they're using their peep sight to really align themselves, which in my opinion is not the best way to go about it. So now that you have the laser on the bow and you've recorded your first day, now what I do is I move them to 10 yards, and I tell them they cannot shoot an arrow for 1 week. What I'm going to do is I'm going to teach them to use tension. And you can always use a valley. This is a trick on a bow. Like I shoot a Bowtech bow, which is the most advanced technology made. And I'm not saying that because I've been, with Bowtech for so long. It's the only split bus binary that can be completely tunable. I can't even imagine me shooting another bow after I've done everything with my high-speed test and looked at all that stuff. So I work on what I call dynamically and statically balancing the bow. You should have a certain amount of weight that you physically hold, and then you should have a certain amount of weight in your hand, and then you use the tension between the two of them to physically set the pin in the target. Not talking about bubble leveling or anything. And so once we balance the bow is our first step, and then we have them not shoot an arrow for a week. They basically draw down, burn all their oxygen, holding that pin in the target, and then they draw back down, relax, draw it again, and they do that for 1 week for an hour a day. And a week later, when they start letting the pins, and what it does is it builds you a visual sight picture of aligning that pin to a dot and allowing you to steady yourself and teaching you where you need to have your movements. Now, there's two other things that I do need to go into. One of them is what I call my 60-yard hold test, and this is a very advanced thing, because who's to say that the top or the bottom limb on the bow doesn't actually have 2 to 4 pounds of deflection difference? Yeah. Those limbs aren't identical. Now, engineers have worked really hard to take the booger button on a bow and move it lower and lower and lower, but the center of gravity is right where your hand is, so the riser is not even from the top to the bottom. So you're fighting that also. So you have to realize that when you go out there and you realize that your limbs aren't even, and now you've counterbalanced it. So how many times have you drawn the bow and you went out at 60 yards and your pin was low? You just couldn't get the bow up into the spot. Now, I don't recommend doing this because your tiller time will be off on any other bow than a Bowtech, and you can adjust this out of it. But you go basically out at 60 yards, and you hold that pin in that target until, and if it sets low, then you go ahead and just move a quarter turn on the upper limb, and it'll move the bow up. And if you take the bottom limb, it'll move it down. So your tiller timing to adjust the poundage difference between the two.
So when you're adjusting the tiller timing, what's the specific 60 yards? Does it matter?
No, but I think 60 yards is like the hardest to hold it, and it'll make you, the further out you are, the more you'll feel it, the more that you'll see it. The other thing that's a major trick, a lot of people, this is the one thing that people have to, there's two things in bow tuning that I want people to pay attention to. Number one, peep rotation is the hardest thing to come back to. So if you take your D-loop and you don't use silicone wax, which is a lubricant wax, if you actually take the wax, like a honey wax, like something that's kind of a beeswax, right? A beeswax is really, really tough. It acts as though it's a glue, and you bury that all over in your serving, and then you tie the D-loop with it, and then you tie it down really tight. It'll become a knot that's, one countering each other, and your peep won't rotate anymore. It'll be in the right spot. The knot actually twists, and then it in turn. So about 85% of all the pro shops I go into are just tying D-loops on strings and don't have any kind of legitimacy so that the peep rotation is right. Mm-hmm. The second thing, how many times have you drawn the bow, a new bow, and you started to draw, you got back into your anchor point, you started to relax, and then, you felt like the bow wanted to draw itself back down and yank your arm out of your joint.
Yeah.
And that comes from you being overdrawn. And that's the one thing. The draw force curves are so long and the valley is so short that it's super important that your draw length is right on. And the other thing you can do is set your draw stop at your actual draw length, and then set the draw length module at a half of an inch under, and that will allow you to have a full half of an inch of valley. Now, that's part of the tuning that I was talking about earlier on whether or not you should actually, how much the bow should weigh with how much back pressure you should have. So once you balance the two of those, you then can come up with the right combination of how much weight you should actually be holding and whether you can hold that pin in the target. And do not overstabilize. Stabilizers do help. We've talked about it a long time. But I've had some bows that shot better without a stabilizer, and somebody on Facebook or something will say, "Hey, Jim, why did you have the stabilizer off the bow?" Or "Why did you use that?" I just never know why I'm going to do what or where I'm going to do it or when I'm going to do it, but it is a reason behind it most of the time.
So have you played with the stabilizers on and off quite a bit, and does that just vary depending on the bow?
Yeah, it does. It's huge. I always have this thing called a deflex and a reflex riser, and I did this thing years ago with Bowtech, and I've had a lot of other bow manufacturers not happy with me, and I love everybody, and I'm friends with everybody. Pete Shepley has always been one of my biggest heroes, and I shot his bows years ago, and a lot of engineers have been upset with me, but I feel like I take the testing that I've done and I allow everybody to see it. And because I do that, the archery industry gets better. I remember taking some, high-speed video and Limb Saver, Limbs Vibration Laboratory, Alan Lawton and Steve. They're some of my best friends, and I've spent a lot of time with their equipment, and they have what's called NavCom, and we used to work with resonant vibration and the exact frequency that a bow actually goes through, and it's different than even on a rifle barrel, so it's a resonant vibration style. So, now our limbs are countered and we don't have as much shock in the bow. But deflex and reflex risers have a huge effect on some of the way that operates, and our limbs are now parallel and they're countering each other instead of jumping forward. But your balance of the bow and the deflex and the reflex riser will either add hand torque or not hand torque, and hand placement. And there's just so many, we look at a bow and say, it's easy, we just draw the string back and pull the trigger. But if you really break it down, there are just so many things that you have to teach yourself and to tune in order to perform. That's why I don't recommend everybody making these crazy long, stupid shots, because they're going to go bad if you don't just become obsessed. But I think that's what an archer should do. They should become obsessed. They should actually love the game so much that they spend the time to learn and listen. Don't take the pro shops, their word for it only. The more information you know, the more effective the pro shop can be at tuning your bow. And, I don't even know how anybody who's a real archer does not have a bow press at their house now. It's really a mandatory.
Yeah. And one of the problems is that there's so much information out there these days that it's hard to
decide what's right and wrong.
It's hard to sift through all of it. So
yeah.
But maybe we can link up to some of these videos and the tests you've done. Do you have those available?
There's a lot of stuff on my Facebook, and I'm going to be launching. I have almost 700 videos online that I have not launched yet. And I'm also working on an advanced training program, because so many people have felt like they have learned over the years. Western Extreme is in its 12th season, and I just signed another 3-year contract. And so I feel very privileged. It's one of the longest-running shows of all time on the network. And it's been rated, number one on and off on the network, out of over 300 and some programs. So it's been really, really received well. And so everybody's asked me Jim, we want some more teaching. And so I'm building an advanced training thing that's going to help everybody from the beginner to the advanced. And I'm not an expert at anything, and I don't know everything, but it's my own conception on what I think that I've learned and what helps me, do what I get to do. So it'll help. But Facebook's a good one, and Vimeo, and I don't think there's very much on YouTube. But
We'll link up to some of that, and I'll put it in the show notes as well, so people can track that down and kind of link it to some of the stuff that you're working on.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things that we see a lot in these days, and one of the things I appreciate about you, is that it seems a lot of guys get hung up whether they're a bow hunter or a rifle hunter. Yet, you're kind of an expert in all weapons. What's your thoughts on the choice between weapons, and what's your mindset behind it?
I just became the national spokesperson for the Mule Deer Foundation, and the one complaint I have, the one thing. Charlton Heston was an absolute army for our industry. In one of his last addresses that he ever gave to the NRA, he said, if we focus on anti-gun legislation, but we ignore anti-gun generation, if we spend all of our time legislating and none of our time mentoring, in one generation we will have failed. And it's really sad. I mean, we need to make sure that the next generation is coming up and we're spending time. All of the hunters out there are experts at one level or another and can do little project give backs. It could be nothing more than taking a kid out with a BB gun or a bow and spending some time with them. But the one thing that I want to scream at the top of my lungs in every breath that I have is quit fighting. The last time I heard something negative about our sport, it didn't come from a vegan or a vegetarian or an anti. It came from one sportsman complaining to another sportsman on how he or she spent their time afield. And the key to it is, if it's ethical and it's legal, I don't care if you're doing it with spit water or a slingshot. It doesn't matter. You have a deer tag. I'm not here to tread on you or to trespass. I'm here to love you. I'm here to make sure that you're spending time with your family and friends outdoors. I don't care how you do it. I don't care what you do it with. I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to stand as a brother next to you and yell at the top of my lungs that I'm proud of who I am and what I do, and I'm the greatest conservationist in the world because I'm a hunter.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important that we stick together on that aspect. When it comes to Western hunting, how do we become more successful? And guys like you kind of operate at an entire another level, and you seem to get it done hunt after hunt. So what is it that we're doing wrong, or what can we improve upon as a whole?
It's weird because I just, over the course of time, I've been in a lot of camps with a lot of different guys, and I've seen a lot of, whitetail hunters and stuff try to come out west. And first off, I think a lot of people just have a weak mindset. Like it's one thing to walk to the tree stand and walk due north and have your latte coffee that you're going into, but you've got to be mentally prepared. You don't have to be in shape. I think the whole, regimen, it's really cool that sportsmen and everybody are working on, becoming the ultimate predator, as others would say. But 10 breaths, 10 steps, I don't care how out of shape you are, you can go anywhere. And I would encourage anybody to set a goal for themselves and go for it. And don't be intimidated by all that you read and all that you see to make that happen. I think anybody can do it. But the mindset of being mentally tough is super important because I'm willing to do anything. I leave in the morning before daylight, and I have one focus in my mind. I am not coming back without my tag filled. It doesn't matter if the longer it takes, the harder I work, and that's the key to it. It's like, how bad do you want it? And then the other thing is that people don't know how to move. Animals can't see you. They can't hear you, and you've got to be able to execute the shot. So it's really everything about how you move. And so many people make so many simple mistakes, skylining themselves, not really paying attention to the wind. I'll just walk across this drainage or this draw, and then their adrenaline just takes over, and then they can never really tell you. They lie to their buddies. They really can't tell you where the pin was. It was on the spot. I don't know what happened. Well, you really had so much adrenaline that you really didn't go through a shot sequence, and you really didn't know 100% if you could make the shot or not. And so, there's just so many aspects to it. But the best way to do it is is to put on a pair of knee pads and actually go around and crawl around and figure out how to move and make sure that you're over-exaggerating, not making mistakes, you know? Things that we've all read about, things that we all know that people just get lazy on. Shutting the car door, walking on top of the hill, driving around, bugling in front of a bull elk, because he's alongside the road and it's not a place you can hunt. Just all kinds of wacky stuff,
So it's going back to the adrenaline side of it. It's something that's really hard to train yourself for. And short of having, 10, 20, 30 years of experience and maybe 60, 70, 80 elk under your belt to calm you down, how do you go about, or how does someone go about controlling the adrenaline or controlling the buck fever?
You know what it is? It's absolutely, like I said, like some people get off on the horns or the hunt. I get off on the shot. I just feel strong and executing the shot. I'm excited about the shot. Like when I pull the trigger and I watch the arrow, see, I aim with my right eye and I watch the arrow strike with my left. It's a confirmation that I just shot him in the X-ring. Mm-hmm. So the way you compensate for adrenaline is by running through a shot sequence and tell yourself before the hunt that you are not going to shoot the arrow until you consciously absolutely have went through that. I'm going to draw the bow. I'm going to start to relax. I'm going to pull my front arm against my back arm. I'm going to take the pin and put it on the inside of his kneecap. I'm going to float it up into the top of the lower third. I'm going to hold that spot. I'm not going to think about triggering. I'm going to think about aiming. I'm aiming with my right eye. Once the bow goes off, I watch the arrow strike the animal with my left eye. I used to talk to my boys when they were younger. I used to say, watch the arrow hit the target through the peep. Watch the arrow hit the target through the peep. Well, that's an impossibility. But it basically says don't drop the bow, which is another major problem people have, right? Mm-hmm. They have to pull the bow away to look. So they shot on flat ground their whole lives, but they didn't, when you hunt, it's not on flat ground.
When I was growing up, now that you say that, I totally had forgot about that, but I used to do the same thing. I'd drop to see where the arrow hit. And so when I was a young kid, they used to tell me, don't move the bow until you hear the arrow hit the target. And
yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, watch the arrow hit the target through the peep.
So for specific takeaways other than, shooting technique and whatnot, what specific takeaways can guys grab from this interview or from you about this season?
Love archery. Find the love for archery. Go get every kid involved ever. Just take responsibility for yourself. Don't let just the pro shop be the only one that works and tunes your bow. If you really want it bad enough, you're going to pull it off. And then the other thing is that set a goal for yourself and just do it. Quit complaining. Quit saying I'm going to. Everybody says I'm going to do it when I'm rich and famous, or I'm going to do it when I'm in shape, or I'm going to do it when I'm a better shot, or just do it. Just go out and do it. Quit complaining. Wake up in the morning before your work. Shoot in your bedroom. Do whatever it takes. Just enjoy archery and go after it. If you want it bad enough, you'll make it happen, and things materialize. I can't tell you how many times I've been on top of the ridge, had something run away from me, and everybody around me is like, well, that's over with. And I'm like, no, it's not. And they're going to go, you're going to walk all the way down the bottom of that canyon right now and go after it? Yeah, because the success just adds, It's like I had a cameraman a few years ago who I had a disagreement with, and my cameraman is my best friend. He's with me every day. I had a very, 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 very well-known celebrity hunter that is a super wicked climb up and down the hill thing, and he was talking about how he had shot 5 animals that year and how he couldn't get a cameraman tough enough to follow him up and down the hills, like all the way through there, and he had fight after fight after fight, and he had outwalked them all. And I looked at him and said, dude, I just shot 71 big game animals last year, and every one of them is on camera because I didn't try to outrun my cameraman. I didn't try to outwalk him. I didn't say I was tougher than he was. We just hung out together, and we were a partner and a team, and I made that happen. And this one gentleman that I had as a cameraman, we had been up and down there, and I had just walked down the middle of, like, in the hot sun, a bull all the way down the bottom of a canyon, and the bull that I first started bugling up above, and I turned around and I started to head back up the hill again, and he went, "You're crazy. What are you doing? Like, why are we doing this? So we're going to get up there and he's going to shut up." I got an elk tag in my pocket. That's the only bull I know about. It's in the middle of the day, and I'm just going to breathe hard. That's not going to kill me. We got to get up there to make it happen. So whenever it happens, when you think that there might be a 1% chance, just take off and go see what happens.
Yep. And you never know what that 1% is going to lead you to either. I mean,
no, that's it.
Maybe you won't find that elk, but you may find something really cool and interesting around the next corner.
Do not let your mind tell you no.
So if you could go back and give yourself some advice when you were 20 years old, what advice would you give yourself?
Man, I don't know. It's just, I wish I could just take all of the tools that I've learned, the little things that are in your head, and then be able to add them together. I just remember so vividly, there's like one hunt that I've always wanted to go on that I still have not got the hunt of a lifetime on. I've always wanted to go to Kodiak Island. I read about Chuck Adams being up there and being able to hunt, back then you could hunt $5 on the island. And I love blacktails because I came from Oregon, and I always wanted to do that. And I'd always imagined like me meeting Chuck Adams and me spending time with him and seeing how he moves and how he's able to get on the animals and how he makes those shots. And now people look up to what I do, and I don't know. I don't have any real advice, like one word that I could give other than just perseverance, right? Just earning my way is the only way to describe what I've done.
Okay. So what was your dream hunt when you were, younger? Obviously, was it the Kodiak Island, but as opposed to now, you've hunted around the world, you've been everywhere. What's your dream hunt look like now?
I wonder whether or not I have hundreds of animals that would qualify for a record book, and I only have one animal in a record book that a outfitter put there because that's not the real reason I hunt. But I've thought a lot about the North America 29. I had my own species list that were important, and Africa was a big part of my life because I basically had the Adventures Abroad show, and I spent a lot of time over there. Between 30 and 40 days over in Africa for 10 years. And so I was able to go shoot a lot of stuff. It's like a whole other subject, but I love doing conservation stories. I darted 9 white rhinos where they had not been indigenous in over 80 years, which is really cool. I shot a crocodile that had an 8-year-old little boy's jersey inside of it that was missing for 3 months. I swam for a hippo in croc-infested and hippo-infested water, which is one of the dumbest things I've ever done, and lost all the skin on the bottom of my feet from the fungus that was in the water. I've walked through spots where I've had hundreds and hundreds of ticks that were, burrowed into my legs. And it's weird. Like, and then I was able to take 2 elephants with my bow, which is the largest thing on planet Earth that you can shoot an arrow at. And a lot of people say, why would you want to shoot an elephant? And I always say, because there isn't any more Tyrannosaurus rexes left. And a lot of people would say, why would you shoot an elephant? They're endangered. And the uneducation that is going on, there's no difference between an elephant and a deer in Wyoming. They all have to be managed at some level. There's over 100,000 of them that migrate in and out of Wanky Park every year, only could sustain 44,000 of them. They drink 50 gallons of water a day. They eat 50 pounds of feed, complete deforestation, have no predation, and live to be 65 years old. When I shot my first elephant, it was the most amazing thing I've ever done. I had tears in my eyes. I was just swelled up like all over. And over 101 people came and took me home for their families. And so it's just different. Like, everybody judges everybody as sportsmen on what's right and what's wrong, but I make my own ethics. I make my own decisions, and I do my own research, and I don't take anybody's advice for that. I have my own self to live up to my own expectations, and as I think anybody should as they're looking at other stuff. I would never shoot a rhino and have worked on all kinds of programs to preserve them. But the greatest conservationists in the world are hunters,
After all of that and everything you have done, what does the term adventure mean to you, and how has that changed throughout your career?
It's like I've been on a lot of hunts that I really didn't enjoy. Some of the hard ones, you persevere. It's one thing to just jump into camp and walk out on the first day and have an animal that's just standing there, and you shoot an arrow through the 12 ring. And it's kind of weird for me because I've been able to travel like literally all over the world, and many times I'll travel for a week and a half to get to a place and then shoot one arrow and then go home. And so everything is different, but the one thing that I just know I love to do is elk hunt. It's in my blood. I just wish there were 12 Septembers.
Wow. So even traveling to Africa now, has that kind of lost its luster, or do you have a inherent want to travel and seek new area?
No, like I love the traveling. I love the pursuing of the new animals. Like it's helped me. Like one of my little tricks I do in Africa, there's over 23 species that will be on one property. Mm-hmm. And how do you tell the difference between a blessed buck and an impala? So I used to take my camera and I would just take pictures of them, and then I'd sit in my room at night and I would think about and look at the nuances between the two of them. I wanted to possess the tracking skills as a tall white guy that they had in Africa. I'll never be a tracker like them. I don't know how they possess those skills, but I want to learn as much as I can, and I've learned a lot of those things from those guys over in Africa that's helped me become a better Western hunter. And I've taken a lot of the Western hunter stuff and taken it over there, and they're completely blown away because they've never been around a real experienced archer. And so the one thing that I've been able to do is I've been able to help a lot of outfitters and all of the guides learn a lot of advanced things that's helped them be more successful with their clients. And that experience you can't get any other way other than just putting some boot leather to the ground and going after it, But I'm as excited about hunting it today as I was when I was 12 years old. I may look at it differently, but it's all part of who I am. I'm a predator. And I love shooting a bow and arrow.
So if you had to narrow it down to one species that has taught you the most, or what one species out there can teach a hunter the most about becoming a better hunter?
I think that mule deer, as far as the western United States goes, when it comes to just flat out having to go spot and stalk and pulling it off, a mule deer buck symbolizes the West. It's our number one animal that's most in trouble out of anything in North America. And it's really, really important to our future generations that we're all conserving it at some level. But the real deal is that when you actually get on the ground and you go out and spot and stalk a mule deer buck and shoot him through the 12 ring, you've accomplished something. You just didn't put an arrow in him at some long distance in the wrong spot, but you actually shot him in the 12 ring. There's nothing more gratifying than that. You're in open grass, you're in open plain, you might be bedded down, you might be in canola fields, wherever you're at, but you're stalking. And the difference between just seeing them and then getting close and being able to, tilt up, draw the bow, have them not see them, completely calm, have them broadside, and shoot an arrow through them is not an easy task. So that should be somebody's ultimate goal, in my opinion, to learn the skills of that,
To take a mule deer. So as the spokesman for the Mule Deer Foundation, do you think it's something that we need to weigh between encouraging people to hunt mule deer and the managing the numbers that we have? We have very low numbers, and a lot of people say that we should lessen the mule deer tags. What's your thought on the mule deer population?
I think that overall, it's not for me to judge someone else because, many people have said a mule deer is not a piece of meat, and for me, it's not a piece of meat. It really is important, and I use an example of this exact question you just gave me. I worked with the Angadi Deer Association over in Chihuahua, Mexico, and I was privileged enough to be able to go on a hunt, and I was just I wasn't hunting for myself. I had just been with a really nice man, and he took me and introduced me to a family, and so everybody was just going to go out and meat hunt. So they threw all the kids in the back of the truck. Everybody grabbed a 22 long rifle. Now, it's way too small. In the United States, we would not be caught dead hunting with that 22 long rifle, but that's all they had. So there was like 4 or 5 of them. All the kids jumped back to the truck. Grandpa's driving around the farm, and every single time we saw a deer, it didn't matter how far it was. It didn't matter how big it was. It could have been a doe, a fawn, a buck, whatever it was. That whole back of that truck lit up like the 4th of July, firing at that deer, okay? And because it only had meat value, and an animal cannot have meat value. We've been registered in our brains since we were small children. How many times did we hear mom and dad say, you can only shoot it if you can eat it. I don't want it to go to waste. And yes, that's super, super important. And we got to make sure that we're taking care of that resource. But if I told Grandpa that I was willing to pay him $3,000 for every mature buck, for every single mature buck that he could, that we could harvest on his ranch, he would tell all them kids to get out of the back of the truck, no more. You're going to be shooting does and fawns and bucks. You're going to build some water holes. You're going to post some fences. You're going to figure out how you could steal the deer off the neighbor's place and put them our place, right? And people say, well, it's not a rich game. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Well, our tag fees, our amount of money that you spend and I spend in our western states, all of that money goes for the preservation and the help of wildlife and stuff. And I would make all of us, as more importantly, if it's open and it's legal for you to shoot a mule deer buck, then you have a tag in your pocket, go for it. But what I don't condone is that there's a resource with nobody monitoring how many bucks you shoot and wound. Mm-hmm. Is it legal, like in some states like Alaska, for you to go ahead and poke an animal, shoot him in the wrong spot, have him run off, and just go out and shoot another one because there's nobody governing you? Those are our own ethics. That's where we as sportsmen can make a difference and make a change, and as we start, more and more people see some of that long-range shooting, and they're not capable of it, and they've been doing it on the range, but they're not really proficient with it, the more likely we are going to have some wounded stuff. So I would say we have to all follow our own ethics with that stuff.
No, I think that's very important. And like you say, an animal has to have value. The same thing you see in the management of Africa and management of a lot of the Texas ranches and things like that. I think a lot of it we hear is, we're trying to get more and more sportsmen into the industry. And in all reality, we need quality, not quantity sportsmen. And that comes in with the ethics. I mean, we can teach everyone to bring a gun and go hunting, but they don't carry the same value or the same respect. So I think what's important is that we carry on the quality sportsmen, not just the quantity of sportsmen.
You bet. Absolutely. I totally agree with you.
So, Jim, what would you consider yourself world-class at?
Nothing. Being a knucklehead.
Well, I think people would argue with you. You're very world-class at a lot of things, but I guess that's the humble response. But if you had to nail one thing, what would it be?
I would say loving my kids. Like I've had so much fun being a father. It's been an unbelievable journey. It's the most life fulfilling thing. I haven't been perfect, but I love them, and I love being a father.
Being a father is kind of a journey, so I don't think anyone's perfect at it in the beginning. So
yeah, that's for sure. I love hot rods too. That's my other passion in my life. We still have the car I drove to high school in, and I've been able to restore 11 old hot rods and had a lot of fun with those. There's nothing like throwing on a pair of All-Stars and a white T-shirt and driving around something with some big horsepower that you built.
So, what was the vehicle that you drove to high school in?
I have a 55 Chevrolet. It's a gasser. It's got a blown big block that's got about 900 horsepower on the street.
Wow.
My dad broke a lot of world records. Right now I'm building a dragster, actually. Brad Hadman, who won 325 world championships with them, is helping me build a front-engine dragster that is modeled after something about 1968, 1969, full-bodied with a 392 blown Chrysler in it. my goal is to try to go 230 miles an hour, but that's something I have had a real passion for, and something that part of my father's heritage and stuff, and what I love.
So is that kind of like the childhood dream? Is there a land speed record that you want to break as a personal accomplishment?
Well, it's not that. It's really, Don Garlitz was a big inspiration for me, and in 1964 he broke the very first 200-mile-an-hour path, and with money you can almost buy anything, but for me it's not like that. So the secret is that while I'm out hunting all over the nations, I'm always grabbing my binoculars and looking in little old ladies' backyards for those special cars, and yes, I've hauled many of them home on a trailer. Really? But the key is that to find the 392 Hemis, because they were only built for 2 years, in 1957 and 1958. It was the holy grail. It broke all of the drag race stuff, so it's vintage out of respect for something that was really, really special. And so I built a 30 Model A with one. I have one sitting in my office right now that I just got out of the machine shop that I'll be building up. But for me, is to go back in that time when drag racing wasn't about money. It was really about, what you could build and how innovative you were. And one of my greatest friends, top 5 on the hand, is Steve Torrance, and you can watch him on ESPN on Sunday mornings. He's running Top Fuel dragsters. He's going 328 miles an hour, and him and Don Garlitz are really good friends, and got to spend a bunch of time with Don, and my dad built motors for him back when he was younger, in his younger days, and just that whole vintage, that period, and that time. And so for me, this front engine, the fact that you're driving through the fire, whatever blows up in front of you, you're going to drive through. Your legs are over the axles. You have, an engine that's over 50 years old in front of you. Yes, it's been restored, but it's still a cast iron block with a blower, with an injector. You feel the fuel, you smell it. If you've ever been around nitromethane, you get it in your eyes, it burns. It's just something about a Hemi that just drives me. So my 1958, 1957 Hemis, every one of them I've found while I was out hunting. It's one thing to buy one, but it's another thing to find one. So those are some of the greatest trophies I've actually found while I've been afield.
Oh, that's an interesting fact. Huh. Well, I appreciate all the knowledge, Jim. It's been a huge help.
Yeah.
Actually, I have one more question for you.
Yeah.
Why don't you give us one piece of gear? There's a lot of guys that would love to hear some gear advice or gear tips from you, but what's one piece of gear that you've picked up in the last year that you find yourself raving about all the time to all your friends?
Okay, there's 2 of them. I can't give you one. There's
fine.
2 of them that I believe. All of my string problems have went away, and we've been talking about lots of custom string companies forever, but I'm telling you there's a huge difference, and this is through testing. And I don't say this lightly, but America's best bowstrings, every major professional shooter on planet Earth is pretty much shooting their stuff. Some of the largest bow companies in the world have stopped making strings and are now using them. And all of my string stretch went away, and it has been a huge tuning improvement for me. I would go and abuse my equipment and go on 2 hunts and come back and my bow is still paper tuned. So that was a gigantic, catastrophic thing for me. Like I fought it for 4 years, and it's went away with their platinum set of strings. And number 2, the greatest elk hunter to ever live, and a man who's humble, who has a great heart, who is one of my greatest friends, is Dan Evans at Trophy Taker. And for years I've been using his rests, and I think they're extremely simple. But if you've ever met Dan, no one has killed bigger, more wild bulls than him. I think he's had 40 bulls that he shot in his lifetime, but all of them were really, really big ones. He's just unbelievable trophy room on bull elk. But he just invented a brand new sight. It's the most expensive sight made, and it's a single pin, and it's actually you move it out of the way, and it has multiple pins. So it's a brand new equalizer in that sight, and I'm really proud of him for what he's done. So those are 2 things that I think are super innovative this year.
Yeah, Dan is always one of the on the forefront of innovation when it comes to archery technology, and it's amazing what he produces in a single year.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah. Well, Jim, where can we find out more about you and kind of watch some of what you got going on, and maybe what kind of things can we look forward to coming up with you?
Well, lots of gut piles for sure. Or the mystical flight of the arrow, as Mr. Ted Nugent would say. And you can look me up on Facebook. It's just I try to get back to everybody. I'm not a guy to go out and buy likes or none of that kind of stuff. All of the guys that are on there are real archers. Real archers are following it, and I try to get on there and try to give as much information as I possibly can. And yes, there's going to be a bunch of videos coming up, and you can always go to jimburnworth.com, which is my website. And I'm going to have the new broadhead that I'm designing and building, and I'll also have a bunch of new releases that will change a lot of people's lives for sure. So,
yeah, you mentioned a release earlier. What's special about the new release?
It's the 5-point anchor system. I just cannot believe I have several patents being filed right now on that and a broadhead, but it's different. It's conceptually different. But I'm going to show everyone how you slow your rhythm down. So it doesn't matter where you're at right now. When you pull these, I've actually taken like where in your arm you actually hold, how your hand is, where your eye is going to be in line. So just with the movement of the hands and the way that the ergonomics are, it's the most inline release ever made. It's not just a little takeoff of something. It really is different. And so I've had a bunch of very big archery professional people and starting to draw them and look at them, and I'm flat excited about it. My number one question I've been asked over time, a billion times, is what release I shoot and why. And you're steadier when you put 50% of the weight on your hand, 50% of the weight, on your wrist, and you're able to pull through. And then you just test it with the laser that I talked about earlier. Okay. And so I'm excited about it. There's some new stuff coming.
And when are we going to be able to see some prototypes for that, or when's that?
I will start launching on the website and on my Facebook page, and be hunting with it this coming season. So I'm excited about it. It'll hit TV next year, but it'll be out and everybody will know about it pretty quick.
Alrighty, well, excited. Any teasers for this upcoming season of Western Extreme?
There's a show on there that I'm really proud of that I'm hoping to win a GMA on this year. It was a conservation story. It was shot amazingly well, and it's on mountain lions in British Columbia. And I shot. I treed 6 mountain lions. I treed 7 mountain lions in 9 days. And it's just an amazing story about conservation and how we should be regulating the number of wild cats, with dogs. And I also wrote an article in the Mule Deer Foundation magazine that just appeared on my desk this morning. So, yeah, cool.
Well, neat. Appreciate you taking the time out of your day before you head to Alaska to give us some tips and advice for this season.
Yeah. Cody, if I could ever help in any way, and I really appreciate you being a true archer and allowing this podcast to happen, and through education, and all you guys listening out there, I just want to thank you very much for spending the time and hanging out with us. And if I can ever help in any way, just look me up on Facebook. I'm there, and I'm just a normal guy who just loves archery just like you guys.
All right, appreciate it, Jim. Thanks.
All right, bye-bye.
Hey guys, thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the show and maybe even picked up a few tips along the way. Join us right here every Thursday morning for more interviews and great hunting tips. And be sure to help us out by leaving a review on iTunes. For more information about this show and the rest of our guests, check out the show notes for links and additional resources on our website, www.therichoutdoors.net.